Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My Name is Dad. And thanks again for tuning in. This is going to be a little bit of a different kind of episode, a little more in the news, sort of opinion piece, rather than my my multi-part series of who I am. Just going to take a little break from that. I wanted to do this episode. So I was like, blocked out a day. I got to make this episode. Then we'll get back to the Who I Am series. But first, let's just hear from the sponsor, which is myself, Point B Grading and Turfgrass Maintenance LLC in the Phoenix area. We service basically Arizona and the Las Vegas, California, Southern California area. If you need some grading done, laser grading done, we do a lot of sports fields, a lot of baseball infields, a lot of softball infields. Do a lot of irrigation work too. Lately, I've been doing a lot of backyards. So if you got a project going on in your backyard, go ahead and hit me up. You can head over to pointbgrading.com. or email at pointbgrading@gmail.com. Okay, so this episode, we're going to be talking about the trial of Karen Read, which recently has a new documentary out on Max. It's called A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Read. And I have some thoughts, and I thought I would share them with you, and I would definitely love to hear your thoughts also. So I have some thoughts, and we're going to also talk about what side of the fence I'm going to lean on. As we get going here. It's probably going to be pretty obvious as we get going, but I do have some thoughts about this case. It's over in the Boston area, in a little town, a suburb of Boston called Canton, Massachusetts. All right. And I'm not going to go into super details on this. I have some notes, but it's not super detailed. I may get some things wrong. I may be paraphrasing. Take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. Please go watch the documentary. Please do your own research. But I am going to try to summarize what's going on and how I feel within 30 minutes here, which does not enough time to go through the whole case and all that stuff. So, okay. In the early morning hours of January 29th, 2022, so about 3 years ago, Boston Police Department officer John O'Keefe was found dead outside of the home of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, in Canton, Massachusetts. So, John O'Keefe, Boston police officer, he was about 46 years old at the time when he died. He was a 16-year veteran of the Boston Police Department. Worked for Boston PD, lived in the suburb of Canton. Obviously, a lot of other Boston PDs do the same. Okay, he was raising. Okay, this is the kind of guy this dude was. He was raising his niece and nephew after his sister and brother-in-law passed away. All right, so this guy takes on his niece and nephew and raising them as his own kids, with his girlfriend, Miss Karen Read. Now, Karen Read, I believe, is about 44 years old. At the time, she was 41, and she was his girlfriend. She had kind of come from some money. Her dad was somebody important in the Boston area. I don't know if he was like the dean of a college or something like that. I can't quite remember what it was, but he was, they had some money. She was a financial analyst at Fidelity since about 2007. So yeah, she knew what to do with some money and stuff like that. And she was also an adjunct professor at Bentley University. So adjunct is just basically she's not tenured. She's a part-time, or you could be full-time as an adjunct, but you're not tenured. You don't get all the good benefits and can't be fired and all that stuff. As adjunct, you're trying to prove yourself and everything. So Karen and John, this is, I believe, might have been January 28th when they actually went out to dinner. They wanted to get dinner and drinks. They eventually met up with some friends at the Waterfall Bar and Grill in Canton, Massachusetts. Now, most of these friends that they're going to meet up with were cop friends of John's, particularly the Alberts, which is Brian Albert, who we're going to probably hear some more about as this thing goes on. He was a Boston police officer with John, Jen McCabe and Matt McCabe. Jen is the sister-in-law to Brian. Brian Higgins is another, police officer type, but he was an ATF officer. So those are some of the people that you'll hear as you watch the documentary. They definitely are in the trial, and they're kind of important people in this. And then we're also going to hear a little bit about Michael Proctor, who was the lead investigator for the Massachusetts State Police. So apparently in Massachusetts, if there's a homicide or anything like that, the local police, they help and support. They put up the caution tape and all that, but the Massachusetts State Police, they handle, because it's such a small state, they handle all the homicides and big time crimes and all that stuff. So that's how that works. Okay. So Karen and John, I believe it's January 28th. They go out to dinner. They go out for drinks. They end up at the waterfall, meet up with all their friends, and then they get invited to go to the Albert's house. As we mentioned, Brian Albert, who was a fellow Boston police officer, they're going to go to the Albert's house for the after party and some drinks. So now this takes us we pass over midnight, and we're in now January 29th. Now, one thing you can clearly see is Boston people, they like to drink, okay? These people, I think this was probably just a normal weekend for them, not that big of a deal. Maybe they had the next day off or whatever like that. But they were out drinking, and even, you can tell that even John, when they leave the bar, John just takes his cocktail glass with him, especially they have that sort of, that police officer swag that they can just kind of do whatever they want. So he takes a glass from the bar with him, which I'm sure they were locals and regulars at this bar, and takes it with them. It's full. I don't know what he was drinking, vodka tonic, whatever it was, and he just takes it with them. So they're going to go, and they're all really drunk. I mean, this is 12 o'clock, whatever. And they've been drinking all night. They're getting hammered like it's St. Paddy's Day. All right. So according to Karen, the snow had already been coming down. Now, that night, a nor'easter was supposed to be blowing in, and it was going to be a huge blizzard. They didn't seem to care. No one seemed to care that it was snowing a lot. I would have cared. That was a lot of snow for me. So I was like, holy shit, that's a lot of snow. And that looks very, 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 very cold. But they so John and Karen, they decided they're going to go to the Albert's house where everyone's going for after party. Now they pull up, according to Karen, they pull up to the house, and the house was very dark. The windows looked dark and all that stuff. And she was like, is anybody even home? And then Karen told John, go in and check and see if this is the right place and we're really welcome, And I was like, this is totally a chick thing to say. My ex-wife would totally make me do this. But oh, it looks kind of iffy. Are you sure we're okay to be here? And I don't really know these people. Can you just go make sure? She would totally fucking make me do this. Oh, and it drives me crazy. Okay, so according to Karen, John went into the house. She wasn't really paying attention. She was kind of on her phone. John went into the house and never came back. She waited for 10 to 15 minutes. She got really pissed off because he wouldn't answer her phone calls, wouldn't text her back, but didn't come back out to the car. So she decided to go back to John's house and just be pissed off. On the way back to John's house, because the kids were there, John's niece and nephew. So she was going back to John's house. She left several voicemails and called John several times, screaming like crazy pissed, you're a pervert and I fucking hate you, John, and I go to hell, John, and just the nastiest, meanest things. Just leaving these voicemails for John. And obviously John's not answering the phone because he's dead. So on the way back to John's house, so she gets to John's house and she falls asleep. Okay. She falls asleep for a couple hours. She probably gets back to John's house about 12:45, and then probably sometime about 4 a.m., whatever. She wakes up a couple hours later, and she's freaking out because John's not there, and she's like, something happened to John. Something's wrong with John. He didn't come back home. Well, they've been drinking all night. My first instinct would be oh, he's just sleeping it off at the Albert's house, right? But no. She is freaking out that something's wrong with John. He might be dead. And she starts calling people, right? She calls Jen McCabe, who was at the house, starts calling him, right? That's her friend. Calls another friend. She's freaking out. Has them all come over. They all meet at her house, or at John's house. And then they get in the car and they're going to go look for John, right? And then it happens that while they're driving around, right, looking for John, Karen's in the back seat and she's freaking out and she's like, what if I hit him, or what if he got hit by a plow? And still, no one knows that this could possibly happen. And he could be at the Albert's sleeping on their couch. Okay. But she's freaking out. What if he's dead? Oh, a plow hit him. What if I hit him? Oh my gosh. She's like, I don't remember anything from last night. We drank so much. I don't remember what happened. Right. So about 6 a.m., they finally get back to the Albert's house, right, where the after party was. And Karen instantly, very quickly, finds John's body covered in snow in the front yard over by a flagpole, which is kind of away from the front door, right? And even when they pulled up, Jen and her other friend were kind of like, I don't see anything. She was like, he's right there. He's right there. And she like jumps out of the car, runs over, uncovers from the snow. She knew exactly where he was. And then they were trying to do some CPR on him and like warm him up because, he'd been out in the cold. It was a blizzard, right? It was a freaking blizzard. So as first responders start to arrive, Karen's freaking out still. And she's saying things like, I hit him, or did I hit him, or is he dead? And, oh, John, and all these things, right? So, and this is like, it was an important thing. This is a big thing in the trial because some first responders testify that she said, I hit him. But then she's kind of saying, well, I said, did I hit him? Is this possible? Because she ends up having a broken taillight and all this stuff. And they find pieces of the broken taillight near John, where he's found dead in this front yard. So at some point in the morning, they made Karen do a breathalyzer and she blew like a .08. Now, this is 6 hours, 8 hours later. All right. So they kind of go back to about 12:30. They think that she was probably about twice the legal limit when she left the Alberts house about 12:30, 12:40, because she was home. She got back to John's house about 12:45 because one of the voicemails, you can hear her walking around John's house, screaming and yelling at him what a terrible person he is. Okay. So, and then investigators actually find the cocktail glass broken under John that he took from the waterfall. Okay. He still had this cocktail glass with him. He was drinking it on the way over to the Alberts house, right? They find pieces of Karen's taillight at the scene. Now, Karen had broken a taillight. So Karen's, she had like a Lexus SUV, had a broken taillight, and there was also a hair found on the back of her car, that they found later and everything. There's a lot more details that I did not cover, but that's the basics, okay? Now, Karen was arrested for manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a motor vehicle collision causing death. And there was also, I think she also got maybe a DUI or something like that because she was clearly drunk when she left, okay? Now, eventually, after they hear all the voicemails and they do a grand jury, they actually ended up also charging her with second-degree murder, which basically means like you really did try to kill John with your car. Not that you really planned it, but in the spur of the moment, when you backed into him, you were trying to kill him. You thought that was definitely a good possibility. Okay, so the prosecution argued that Karen Reed intentionally ran over her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her SUV after a night of heavy drinking on January 29th, 2022. They presented pieces of Reed's broken taillight that were found at the scene, suggesting her vehicle was involved in the incident, and a hair from John O'Keefe was found on the back of her car, indicating contact between her car and Mr. O'Keefe. Multiple witnesses heard Reed saying, I hit him several times after O'Keefe was discovered. As I mentioned, the first responders, some of them did testify to that. And again, she knew where to find the body exactly when they pulled up. She was really worried that something had happened to John because I think, kind of like she kind of knew something was wrong with John, that he wasn't just sleeping it off on the Alberts, guest room or on their sofa or whatever. Okay. Now, the defense argues that Karen Reed was being framed as part of a law enforcement cover-up to protect the real perpetrators, suggesting that O'Keefe was beaten inside the house of Brian Alberts, who's a fellow Boston police officer, and was attacked by their dog. They had like a German Shepherd or something like that. And then they left him outside in the front yard. They just threw him outside in the front yard to die. And that the close relationship between the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, who I think I mentioned earlier, and the Alberts family created this conflict of interest. And that is what has basically created this whole, that they're covering everything up to protect each other. All right. The defense also says that the integrity of the investigation was compromised, which it was because there was a fucking blizzard. All right. And that, the way that they collected some of the evidence was wrong, that they used solo cups to collect some blood that was on the snow. But really, in the end, in my opinion, they were just trying to do the best they could with what they had. And this was like kind of like before even the state police took over, because at first it wasn't really a homicide. So the Canton police were kind of doing an investigation. They just found a dead police officer. It wasn't really a homicide or a hit and run at the time, but later on they finally were like, oh no, Karen really did, run this dude over. So they were saying that, the way the evidence was collected was, makes it that evidence can be trusted and all that stuff. And then Michael Proctor, being a dude, he also was making inappropriate text messages and jokes about Karen because she's a good looking woman. And they were making like jokes and some crude remarks and all these things. So that is, because he's unprofessional, then that means that they're covering up the entire case or something. So, okay. So basically Boston is now split into over this trial. There's the huge trial of Team Free Karen, and then the other half are like, she's a crazy cop killer. Okay. She killed her boyfriend, who was a sweet angel who, who took in his niece and nephew after his sister and brother-in-law died. All right. So this chick, Karen, is absolutely batshit crazy. I'm going to tell you. Now, number one, she is very good looking and she knows it. Okay. I believe that Karen Read is a psychopath, where she really doesn't have any remorse for what she does or who she does it to. She's definitely at least a narcissist, right? Just watching her in the HBO documentary, it is so infuriating watching her, and just the look she makes, and she's laughing and joking, and just the way she works with her lawyers and stuff. It is crazy. She has a history of a crazy temper. Okay, this might be like she kind of reminds me of like, the girl. Man, I was gonna look up her name, but it's in the movie Ted, the talking teddy bear. And he has this girlfriend. I forgot what her name was. That was like a big part of the movie too. It's like Melanie or something like that, whatever it is. But she's kind of like she's like a stereotypical, like hothead sort of Boston woman. Well, that's Karen Read, but Karen Read's more like upper class. She's not like white trash, but she's got a super temper on her. There's been many incidents of her, screaming and cussing out people. So she's crazy. And apparently, Miss Karen Read was also texting Brian Higgins, the ATF officer who I mentioned earlier, who was at the house and at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, and was saying that, she thought he was hot and good looking, and they actually kissed one time. So Karen is not a good person. Okay. It's very easy to see, in the documentary. And unfortunately I have some experience, with knowing when people are not good people and or have narcissistic tendencies. Okay. So the defense claims this is all a cover up, a conspiracy, that because all these cops know each other, that they are all just watching out for each other's backs and all this stuff. But I would argue that it is Boston. It is the Boston area. Okay. And, Canton is a suburb where I'm sure a lot of Boston cops probably bought houses and all that stuff. And to me, it's like when a police officer, any police officer who is killed or murdered or dies unexpectedly, that there's going to be a lot of conflicts of interest because cops know each other, right? It's almost like seemingly impossible that there won't be any conflicts of interest regarding this case, unless you bring in people from another state or a way different city. I mean, Massachusetts is a small state. There's a lot of people there. And I was thinking, it's funny that how like everyone in this case, they're all related to each other somehow. Oh, that's a friend of my sister's friend. And, oh, that's my friend. We go to Catholic church together. Or that's my sister-in-law. That's my brother-in-law's cousin. And it's like, okay, John O'Keefe is like the most Boston last name I've ever heard of. Okay. His last name's O'Keefe. Okay. He's like Irish, Italian, or whatever from Boston. Of course, he's related to everybody. So to me, the defense is very, very weak. They're just trying to throw shit at the wall and hope that it sticks. All right. That's all they're trying to do. They're just trying to punch holes in the prosecution's case, which they did in the trial and everything. I think this should have been an easy case. To me, it is an easy case, very clear cut. And I think that's where the prosecution and the investigators went wrong. I think they did think it was open and shut door kind of case. And like, this is obviously she did it. She ran, she hit this dude, she hit her boyfriend, pissed off and drunk at him because she didn't want to go to this after party, which again, she didn't want to go to the after party because her side piece, Brian Higgins, was there at the house. They were already texting each other when they were at the waterfall. And he's like, you're not going to come over and say hi? Well, she was with John, so she couldn't go over and say hi to Brian, right? So I believe she didn't want to go into the house because Brian was there, and John wanted to go inside, and she got all pissed off. And then they got in a big argument. She backs out, boom, runs him over, all pissed off. Maybe she thinks that she just sideswiped him, or she tried to scare him, or, whatever, or she backed up just to yell at him and she accidentally hit him, something like that. Maybe not intently trying to kill the guy, but I think she definitely backed her car up and hit him with the taillight, right? And you have to remember that this is all happening during a blizzard, like a crazy nor'easter blizzard. So, of course, collecting up evidence is going to be tougher. Of course, these people were drinking heavily. Memories are not going to be that good. But again, I just really don't think that these police officers are going to take pieces of her taillight and then plant them at the scene. I don't think, especially with the cocktail glass there. I mean, to me, she's 100% guilty. Like I said, maybe not second-degree murder, but manslaughter, I could definitely go for that. Okay, so I'm definitely on the side of Karen Read. It's a crazy psycho cop killer who definitely, I believe, tried to hurt John O'Keefe with her car, or at least scare him, and it went terribly wrong. And maybe she was so drunk, she didn't even know that she hit the guy. Especially with all the snow, maybe she thought she hit a curb or something like that. I don't know. Now, again, there are a lot more details that I have glossed over, skipped over, because we don't have enough time. But go watch the documentary yourself. Go do a Google search yourself and, see what you can come up with. I think the defense is trying to make this case a making a murderer type of deal. And I was thinking, like, to me, it's not the same, because the conflict of interest is not there. Like I said, the conflict of interest in the Karen Read case is inevitable. I mean, these police officers are going to know each other. They're going to know of someone or connected to somebody somehow. Where the making a murderer one, like the guy in Wisconsin who was, he had a lawsuit against like the sheriff department, and they were really out to get him, I believe. And I don't think that these people, the police department people, Boston Police, Canton PD, are out to get Karen Read. I do believe that they are trying to make sure they cover their asses, because, they got rid of some cell phones and deleted some searches and some text messages, which I believe is, in their mind, is probably just good police work, or not good police work, but it's just like, oh, we don't want the defense to get this, so that they can twist it and make it be used against us. And again, the only reason that the defense got all these text messages and inappropriate text messages is because Internal Affairs was like doing an investigation on the Michael Proctor guy, the lead investigator. So again, it's very, very confusing. There's definitely a lot of things that went wrong. The lead prosecutor guy was very, very boring. They definitely can bring in someone better. As again, I think just the investigation and the prosecution thought it was such an easy case that they were lazy on it. And Karen Read came from some money. She hired, a defense lawyer from LA, Alan Jackson, not the country singer. But this guy, he represented Kevin Spacey and represented, Harvey Weinstein, the movie guy, who got Me Too'd and, is in jail now and all that stuff. It's like, they're going to go balls out, on their defense, where the prosecution, I think, was just like, oh, this is such an easy case, we're just going to go easy on it. And it's turned out to blow up in their face big time. Spoiler alert, they had a trial, and it was a hung jury and led to a mistrial. So now it's back in the news again now, because the second trial, I believe they're just having jury deliberations and choosing a jury, but the second retrial is about to happen. And I am definitely on Karen Read is a psycho cop killer. All right. Again, there's a lot of stuff I glossed over, a lot of stuff I missed over. But to me, I was just like super fascinated by this. And I think it was just it's so dividing is a good one to kind of, hopefully get to hear from some of you guys about what side you're on, and you can, make your case one way or the other. That's totally fine. But I want to thank you for listening. I will be having some more Who Am I multi-part series coming up. So stay on the lookout for those. And thanks again for listening. Again, this podcast is exclusively on Spotify. Tell your friends. Give us a listen. Give us a comment. Give us a thumbs up. Do whatever. Thanks again. Bye.